The apartment door crashed open with a violence that shook the walls. Mrs. Agatha Cornwall, 6 feet of fury in a designer suit, stormed into the tiny studio apartment like a hurricane made flesh. Her perfectly manicured hand slammed a red eviction notice onto the counter where Sarah Mitchell sat frozen, a spoonful of instant noodles halfway to her mouth. "You have 48 hours, Agatha spat, her voice dripping with venom. 48 hours, or I'll have the sheriff throw your pathetic belongings onto the street myself." Sarah's hands trembled as she stared at the notice, her 9-year-old daughter Emma peeking terrified from behind the bedroom curtain. This was the third eviction notice in 2 months, each one coming with increasingly impossible demands. But what Agatha Cornwall didn't know was that Sarah Mitchell wasn't just another broke tenant to be crushed under her Italian heels. She was about to discover that some people, when pushed to the edge, don't break. They fight back. If you're already hooked by this landlady's wickedness, smash that subscribe button because this revenge story is about to get wild. Sarah's nightmare with Agatha Cornwall had begun 6 months earlier when she'd answered an ad for an affordable apartment in downtown Portland. A single mother working 2 jobs as a nurse's assistant and a night shift waitress, Sarah had been desperate for stable housing after her ex-husband disappeared, leaving her with nothing but debt and a daughter to raise. The apartment had seemed perfect, close to Emma's school, near the hospital, and the rent was just within her tight budget. She should have known it was too good to be true. Agatha Cornwall owned 12 buildings across the city, each one a monument to her ruthless business practices. A former corporate lawyer who'd made her fortune bankrupting small businesses and foreclosing on family homes, she transitioned into real estate with the same predatory instinct. But she wasn't just a landlord. She was a tyrant who'd perfected the art of exploitation. The problem started immediately. The apartment Sarah had been shown was freshly painted, clean, with working appliances. The apartment she received the keys to was a different unit entirely, 1 floor down, with water-stained ceilings, a refrigerator that wheezed like an asthmatic patient, and mysterious black mold creeping up the bathroom walls. When Sarah protested, Agatha had smiled that cold, shark-like smile. "You signed the lease, dear. The address is correct. Not my fault you didn't read the fine print." The lease, Sarah discovered too late, was a masterpiece of legal manipulation. Hidden clauses allowed Agatha to charge fees for everything, a pet fee even though Sarah had no pets, a parking fee for a spot that didn't exist, maintenance fees for repairs that were never made, and late fees that kicked in if rent wasn't received by the 1st of the month at exactly 9 a.m., not a minute later. The kicker was a clause that let Agatha enter the apartment, for inspections, at any time without notice. "You can't just walk into my home whenever you want," Sarah had protested during one of Agatha's surprise visits, this one at 6 in the morning when Sarah had just gotten home from her night shift. Agatha's laugh was like shattered glass. "You're home. Darling, you're delusional. This is my property. You're just a temporary guest who pays for the privilege of existing in my space. Don't like it? There's the door." She gestured dramatically. "But good luck finding anything else you can afford in this city. You're lucky I even rent to people like you. People like me." Sarah's voice had been quiet, dangerous. "Single mothers. High risk. Bad credit. One mispayment away from homelessness." Agatha had examined her nails. "I'm practically running a charity here." Over the following months, Agatha's harassment escalated. She showed up at random hours, criticizing how Sarah kept the apartment, threatening fines for imaginary violations. She claimed Sarah's 9-year-old daughter was too loud during the day and issued noise violation notices. When Sarah pointed out that Emma was at school during the day, Agatha just shrugged. "I know what I heard." The other tenants in the building all had similar horror stories. Marcus, a veteran in his 60s living on disability, had been evicted after Agatha claimed he'd damaged property, even though the damage had existed before he moved in. The eviction had been swift and brutal. Marcus had come home one day to find his belongings thrown into the dumpster behind the building, his medications mixed with trash, his military service photos torn and scattered. He'd stood there in the rain, a man who'd served his country for 20 years, crying as he dug through garbage for his Purple Heart. Yolanda, a college student working her way through school, had lived in one of Agatha's buildings for just 3 months before being hit with a surprise inspection. Agatha had white glove tested every surface, documented every minor scuff mark, and kept Yolanda's entire security deposit plus charged her an additional $800 for excessive wear and tear. The bathroom mirror had a crack that existed in the photos Yolanda took on moving day. The carpet stain had been there when she arrived. None of it mattered. Agatha's inspection report, filled with exaggerations and outright lies, stood as official record. The Chen family from the third floor had endured 6 months of harassment about cooking smells that Agatha claimed were contaminating the building. Never mind that the lease said nothing about cooking restrictions. Never mind that every culture cooks food with aromas. Agatha would bang on their door during dinner, shouting threats about eviction and fines. She left passive-aggressive notes on their door about respecting American culture. When Mr. Chen tried to reason with her, explaining they cooked the same meals their family had cooked for generations, Agatha had sneered. Then maybe you should go back to where those generations came from. The Chens left in the middle of the night, too afraid of escalation to even try fighting back. Sarah tried everything legal. She contacted tenant rights organizations, but Agatha's leases were crafted by expensive lawyers to exploit every loophole. The organizations could offer sympathy and advice but little else. She tried the housing authority, but they were backlogged with thousands of cases and warned it could take 18 months just to get a hearing. She even tried reasoning with Agatha, woman to woman, mother to mother, explaining that Emma needed stability for school. Please, Sarah had said during one confrontation in the building's hallway. I'm doing everything I can. I work 2 jobs. I pay my rent on time. I keep the place clean. What more do you want from me? Agatha had stepped closer, invading Sarah's space. What do I want? I want you to understand your place. I want you to know that everything you have because I allow it. Every morning you wake up in that apartment, you should thank me. Every meal you eat, every moment of shelter, it's mine to give and mine to take away. Her breath had been hot on Sarah's face. You're nothing. Just another poor person taking up space in my building. And the moment you stop being profitable, you're gone. Sarah had walked away shaking, not with fear but with a rage so cold it settled into her bones. That conversation was a turning point. She realized Agatha Cornwall didn't see tenants as people. She saw them as prey. Agatha's response to Sarah's attempt at legal recourse was to raise the rent by 40% with 30 days' notice. This is illegal, Sarah had said, her voice shaking. You can't raise rent by that much. Read your lease, Section 47, subsection B, month-to-month tenancy. I can raise it by whatever I want with proper notice. Don't like it? Move. Agatha's eyes had gleamed with malice. Oh wait, you can't afford to move, can you? Moving trucks cost money. Deposits cost money. And with your credit score, no one else will rent to you. You're trapped, Sarah. And we both know it. That's when Sarah realized something crucial. Agatha Cornwall didn't just want money. She wanted power. She wanted to humiliate people, to grind them down, to remind them daily that they were at her mercy. This wasn't business. This was sadism with a lease agreement. The breaking point came on Emma's birthday. Sarah had saved for months to throw her daughter a small party in their apartment, inviting 3 friends from school. They'd been playing in the living room, giggling and eating cake, when Agatha Cornwall appeared without knocking, using her master key. What is this racket? She demanded, her voice cutting through the children's laughter like a blade. It's my daughter's birthday, Sarah said, stepping protectively between Agatha and the children. We are keeping the noise reasonable. Birthday. Agatha's lip card. This is a residence, not a daycare. Parties are prohibited under Section 23 of your lease. That's a $500 violation fee. You can't be serious. They are 9-year-old children eating cake. Dead serious. And these children's parents better not have parked in MY parking lot, or that's another fee for each vehicle. Agatha pulled out her phone, making a show of photographing the party, the children, the decorations. I'm documenting everything. This could be grounds for eviction. Emma's face had crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks as her friends stared in confusion and fear. Sarah felt something break inside her watching her daughter's special day destroyed. The party ended silently, children shuffled out by apologetic parents who threw Sarah looks of pity. One mother whispered, "I'm so sorry. If there's anything we can do." But they all knew there was nothing. Agatha Cornwall was untouchable. That night, Emma cried herself to sleep, asking why the mean lady hated them so much. "Mommy, what did we do wrong? Why doesn't she want me to be happy?" Sarah had no answer. She'd held her daughter until the sobs quieted, then lain awake staring at the water-stained ceiling, something hard and cold crystallizing in her chest. She thought about her daughter's tears. About the veteran Marcus, now living in his car behind a grocery store. About Yolanda, who dropped out of college because she couldn't afford housing and tuition simultaneously. About the Chen family's children, displaced in the middle of the school year, the youngest having nightmares about the angry lady. She thought about every person Agatha Cornwall had crushed under her heel for sport. And Sarah Mitchell made a decision. If Agatha wanted to play dirty, fine. But she was about to learn that nurses deal with life and death every day. They know how to stay calm under pressure. They know how to be patient. They know how to document everything. And they know exactly how to hurt someone where it counts. Sarah started small, with research. She spent her lunch breaks at the hospital learning everything she could about Agatha Cornwall. The woman was everywhere on social media, flaunting her wealth, posting photos from luxury vacations in Bullies and Paris while her tenants lived in squalor. She belonged to exclusive clubs, served on charity boards, was engaged to marry Preston Blackwell, a prominent real estate developer, in 3 months. Her Instagram was a carefully curated fantasy of success and philanthropy. In one photo, she posed at a fundraiser for homeless families. The irony was crushing. Sarah discovered that Agatha's buildings consistently violated housing codes, but inspectors were rarely called, and when they were, complaints mysteriously disappeared. She found online reviews from former tenants describing nightmares identical to her own, but they were always countered by glowing fake reviews that pushed the real experiences down in the search results. She learned that Agatha had been sued 17 times in 10 years, and every case had been settled quietly out of court with non-disclosure agreements that silenced the victims. But the most interesting thing Sarah learned was that Agatha's business empire was built on a house of cards. She was leveraged to the hilt, with mortgages on all 12 buildings, each one dependent on maintaining high occupancy rates and maximum rent collection. One of her buildings was currently under investigation for fire safety violations, and if it was shut down, the financial domino effect could be catastrophic. Agatha wasn't rich. She was drowning in debt, using new rental income to pay old loans, a scheme that only worked as long as nothing disrupted the flow. Sarah also learned about Agatha's fiancé, Preston Blackwell. The man came from old money, ran a legitimate property development company, and prided himself on ethical business practices. His buildings won awards for sustainable design and fair housing practices. He'd apparently met Agatha at a charity gala where she'd presented herself as a philanthropic landlord who provided affordable housing to underserved communities. Preston had no idea who she really was. His social media showed a man who genuinely believed in giving back, in using wealth responsibly. He was about to marry a monster and didn't know it. Armed with information, Sarah began phase 1 of her plan. She started documenting everything with obsessive detail. Every violation, every illegal entry, every harassment incident. She took photos of the mold, the broken appliances, the faulty wiring that sparked when she used the toaster. She recorded conversations with Agatha on her phone, using a recording app that timestamped everything. She kept copies of every ridiculous fee, every threatening letter, every eviction notice. She created a spreadsheet tracking dates, incidents, and Agatha's exact words. Then she reached out to Agatha's other victims. Using social media and tenant rights groups, she connected with Marcus, Yolanda, the Chun family, and dozens of others. Each one had a story. Each one had been too afraid or too broke to fight back alone. But together they had an army. I'm not asking you to take her to court, Sarah explained during their first meeting at a coffee shop, a dozen former tenants crowded around tables. The system is rigged against us. We all know that. Lawyers cost money we don't have. Cases take years. And Agatha has people who make problems disappear. But Agatha Cornwall's power comes from her reputation. From people thinking she's successful, ethical, untouchable. So we take away her reputation. How? Marcus asked, his weathered face skeptical. She's got money. Connections. We've got nothing. We've got the truth, Sarah said. And we've got numbers. And in the age of social media, that's more powerful than money. People listen to stories. They share them. They get angry on behalf of victims. We tell our stories loudly, publicly, in ways she can't silence with NDAs or lawyers. She'll come after us, Yolanda said quietly. She'll make our lives hell. She already did that, Sarah countered. What's she going to do, evict us again? Ruin credit that's already destroyed. We've already lost everything she could take. Now we take something from her. They started a website called Cornwall Properties Truth. Every violation, every harassment story, every photo of uninhabitable conditions went online. They created social media accounts on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. They tagged Agatha's post with reality checks. When she posted photos of her luxury lifestyle, they commented with pictures of the mold in Marcus's old apartment. When she bragged about her charitable work, they shared stories of the families she'd rendered homeless. When she posted about her upcoming wedding to Preston, they replied with testimonies from displaced children. The campaign was relentless. Yolanda, who was studying computer science despite dropping out physically, created a viral video documenting the conditions in Cornwall properties, set to haunting music. She interviewed tenants, showed the apartments, contrasted Agatha's social media luxury with the reality of her buildings. The video got 50,000 views in 3 days, then 100,000, then 500,000. People were angry. They shared it with tags like, "This is Portland's housing crisis," and "Eat the Rich." Agatha's response was immediate and vicious. She sent cease and desist letters to everyone involved, claiming harassment and defamation. She threatened lawsuits she probably couldn't afford. She called Sarah's employers, trying to get her fired, claiming she was unstable and harassing a businesswoman. The hospital HR department called Sarah in for a meeting. "Mrs. Cornwall says you've been stalking her online, making threatening posts," the HR director said, clearly uncomfortable. "I've been documenting housing violations and exercising my right to free speech," Sarah replied calmly. "Everything I've posted is true and I have evidence. Would you like to see the photos of the mold in my apartment? The recordings of her threatening me?" The hospital, after reviewing Sarah's documentation, dismissed Agatha's complaint. But Agatha didn't stop. She showed up at Emma's school, trying to convince the principal that Sarah was an unfit mother. "That child lives in squalor," Agatha told the principal. "I've seen the conditions. Someone should call Child Protective Services." The principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, had known Emma for years. Emma is one of our most well-adjusted students. She's clean, healthy, does her homework, and has good friends. Unless you have actual evidence of abuse or neglect, I suggest you leave. This isn't over, Agatha had hissed. But Sarah didn't break. And she didn't fight back with emotion. She fought back with exposure. She contacted every news outlet in Portland. Most ignored her, dismissing it as a landlord-tenant dispute, too common to be newsworthy. But one young reporter from a local investigative news program named Jennifer Ortiz was interested. Jennifer had been looking for a story about the city's housing crisis, and Agatha Cornwall was the perfect villain. If you can prove everything you're claiming, Jennifer said during their first meeting, we'll air it. But I need documentation. I need multiple sources. I need to make this bulletproof because you can bet she'll sue us if there's any opening. I'll get you everything, Sarah promised. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah coordinated testimony from 23 former tenants. Jennifer interviewed them on camera, documenting their stories. The patterns were undeniable. Agatha used the same tactics on everyone: bait-and-switch apartments, illegal fees, harassment, surprise evictions. But Jennifer needed more. She needed proof of actual crimes, not just unethical behavior. The next phase was more dangerous. Sarah needed evidence of Agatha's financial fraud and her code violations, the kind of information that wasn't public record. She needed someone on the inside. That's when she approached Lisa Chen, whose family Agatha had displaced. Lisa worked as a paralegal at the law firm that handled Agatha's business contracts. She'd stayed quiet because she needed the job, but when Sarah explained the plan, something fierce lit up in Lisa's eyes. I have access to the filing system, Lisa said quietly. If there are documents that show she's been bribing inspectors or falsifying maintenance records, I can find them. That could get you fired. Or arrested. She made my children sleep in a motel for 2 weeks while we found a new place. My daughter cried every night, asking if we were homeless now. Lisa's jaw set. My son started wetting the bed again at age 8 because of the stress. So yes, I'll do it. Over the next month, Lisa carefully copied documents, working late nights when the office was empty. She found a gold mine: maintenance requests that were marked as completed but never actually done, inspection reports that had been altered, and most damning, emails between Agatha and a city inspector named Richard Paulson discussing cash payments in exchange for overlooking violations. The corruption went deeper than they'd imagined. Sarah coordinated with other tenants to file official complaints with the housing authority, all timed to hit at once so they couldn't be buried or dismissed as isolated incidents. 47 complaints in 1 week, all meticulously documented, all from different buildings. The housing authority had no choice but to investigate. Agatha escalated. She filed for Sarah's eviction, claiming non-payment of rent even though Sarah had receipts for every payment, each one time-stamped and photographed. She hired a lawyer to pursue harassment charges. She told Preston that crazy tenants were stalking her, trying to ruin her business out of spite because they'd been evicted for legitimate lease violations. They're trying to destroy everything I've built, Agatha told Preston over dinner one night, playing the victim perfectly. These people, they don't understand business. They think housing should be free. They want to live in nice apartments without paying for them. Preston, who believed in the woman he thought he was marrying, comforted her. He had no reason to doubt her. Yet. But Sarah had one more card to play. The nuclear option. And it required getting closer to Agatha Cornwall than she'd ever wanted to be. There was a charity gala coming up in 3 weeks, one of the social events of the season, where Agatha would be honored for her contributions to affordable housing. The irony was grotesque. Preston would be there. The mayor would be there. Every important person in Portland's real estate and political world would be there. And Sarah was going to attend, not as a broke tenant, but as a guest. Getting an invitation to creativity. Through her hospital connections, Sarah met Dr. Raymond Foster, a wealthy retired surgeon who sat on multiple charity boards. She explained her situation, showed him the documentation, and asked for a favor. Dr. Foster, who'd once been bankrupted by a predatory landlord himself before rebuilding his fortune, agreed immediately. "I'll get you a seat at the table," he said. Literally. "You'll be at the VIP table, right next to Agatha Cornwall's fiancé. And I'll make sure you have time to talk to him." The night of the gala, Sarah barely recognized herself in the mirror. She'd borrowed an elegant dress from a coworker, styled her hair, applied makeup carefully. She looked like she belonged in this world of champagne and string quartets, even though inside she was terrified. Emma was staying with a trusted coworker, unaware of what her mother was about to do. The ballroom was stunning, all crystal chandeliers and ice sculptures. Women in designer gowns mingled with men in tuxedos. Champagne flowed freely. Sarah felt like an imposter, but she held her head high as Dr. Foster guided her through the crowd. Agatha spotted her immediately when she entered the ballroom. The landlady's face went white, then red. She stormed across the room, Preston following in confusion. "What are you doing here?" Agatha hissed, grabbing Sarah's arm hard enough to bruise. "How did you get in?" "This is a private event." "I'm a guest of Dr. Foster," Sarah said calmly, pulling her arm free. "Is there a problem?" "You don't belong here. This is for civilized people, not..." "Not what?" Dr. Foster appeared at Sarah's elbow, his voice pleasant but his eyes cold. "Not people you've been exploiting. I think Sarah belongs here more than most. She works 2 jobs caring for others." "What exactly do you do besides extract wealth from vulnerable people?" Preston was staring between them, confused. "Agatha, what's going on? Do you know this woman?" "She's a tenant," Agatha said, her voice tight. "A disgruntled tenant who's been harassing me for months. She's probably here to cause a scene. We should call security." "I'm here to tell the truth," Sarah said, turning to Preston. Her heart was hammering, but her voice stayed steady. "Your fiancé isn't who you think she is. And you deserve to know who you're about to marry." "Preston, don't listen to her," Agatha snapped. "She's unstable. I've told you about these people. They're trying to ruin me." "Then let her speak," Preston said quietly. "If she's lying, it should be easy to disprove." What followed was the longest conversation of Sarah's life. Right there in the ballroom, as people began to notice and drift closer, forming a crowd, Sarah told Preston everything. She showed him photos on her phone of the mold, the violations, the harassment. She showed him the video that had gone viral. She told him about Emma's birthday party, about Marcus living in his car, about the children's nightmares. She introduced him to Dr. Foster, who'd done his own research and could confirm everything. She gave him the website address where hundreds of similar stories were documented. "These are all lies," Agatha insisted, but her voice was losing its confidence. "Disgruntled former tenants. People who didn't pay rent and got evicted. They are bitter." "Did you or did you not enter Sarah's apartment during her daughter's birthday party and threaten eviction?" Preston asked. "I was enforcing lease terms." "Did you or did you not keep that family's security deposit despite moving documentation showing pre-existing damage?" "Sometimes documentation is unclear." "Did you or did you not tell the Chen family to go back where they came from?" Agatha's silence was damning. Preston pulled out his own phone, looking at the website, reading the stories. His face grew darker with each swipe. Other guests were looking now, whispering. Someone was recording on their phone. The mayor's aide was frantically typing on his device, probably warning his boss. "These people are saying you threatened them. That you entered their homes without permission. That you kept security deposits illegally. That you made racist comments." That you falsified maintenance records. Preston looked at Agatha like he was seeing her for the first time. Is any of this true? It's business, Agatha snapped, dropping the victim act. You don't understand how hard it is to manage rental properties. These people are professional victims. They break things and expect me to fix them for free. They can't pay rent on time and want me to just forgive it. They cook smelly food and blast music and let their kids run wild. Someone has to maintain standards. Standards. Preston's voice was cold now. You call destroying a child's birthday party maintaining standards? That child is 9 years old, Sarah interrupted. And you traumatized her because you enjoy having power over people who can't fight back. The crowd had grown larger. Someone gasped. The mayor's aide was having an urgent phone conversation. Preston's business partner, who'd been standing nearby, stepped forward. Preston, maybe we should take this somewhere private. No, Preston said. This is plenty private. Everyone here should know who Agatha Cornwall really is. Agatha's face was scarlet now, her composure cracking. You're making a scene over nothing. These are just tenants. They are nobodies. They are people, Preston said. And you're a bully who preys on vulnerable people because you can. The gala became the scene Sarah had worried about causing, but not in the way anyone expected. Preston Blackwell, in front of Portland's elite, announced he was calling off the engagement. I will not marry someone who lacks basic human decency, he said, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. And I will be launching my own investigation into every building in the Cornwall portfolio. If the allegations are true, I'll personally ensure the victims receive compensation. Agatha tried to salvage the situation, tried to play victim again, but the crowd had turned against her. People who'd smiled at her an hour earlier now looked at her with disgust. The mayor, who'd been photographed dozens of times with Agatha at charity events, quietly had his staff request the full Housing Authority investigation reports. The charity honoring Agatha suddenly decided to postpone the award, pending review. Sarah watched Agatha's world crumble, and she felt no triumph, just exhaustion and relief. She'd done what she came to do. But Sarah wasn't done. The next morning, Jennifer Ortiz's investigative report aired. 17 minutes of devastating journalism, featuring interviews with displaced tenants, footage of uninhabitable apartments, and the documents Lisa had provided showing Agatha had been falsifying maintenance records and paying off Inspector Richard Paulson. The story went statewide, then national. News outlets across the country picked it up. Portland landlord's empire built on exploitation, read one headline. Predatory housing practices exposed, read another. Agatha Cornwall's empire imploded in slow motion over the following weeks. Tenants across all 12 buildings organized a rent strike, coordinated by Sarah and the coalition. They weren't refusing to pay rent, they were placing it in escrow accounts until conditions were fixed. The buildings couldn't be maintained without rental income. The city launched a full investigation into building code violations, spurred by the publicity and 47 simultaneous complaints. Inspectors found violations in every single building: faulty wiring, gas leaks, structural issues, toxic mold. 3 buildings were red-tagged as uninhabitable. Banks, nervous about the publicity and the possibility of lawsuits, began examining Agatha's loan agreements more carefully. They discovered she'd been inflating occupancy rates and rental income on her loan applications, essentially committing fraud to secure financing. The loans were called in. Agatha couldn't pay. Preston Blackwell, humiliated and furious at being deceived, used his connections to ensure every business association Agatha belonged to knew exactly who she was. She was removed from charity boards. Her club memberships were revoked. Invitations dried up overnight. Her social media accounts, once full of likes and comments, became flooded with angry messages from former tenants and supporters. She eventually deleted everything. Inspector Richard Paulson was fired and faced criminal charges for accepting bribes. His testimony implicated Agatha in systematic corruption. The district attorney, facing public pressure, charged Agatha with fraud, bribery, and multiple violations of housing codes. She hired an expensive lawyer with money she didn't have, taking out a loan against her remaining properties. Agatha tried to fight back. She hired a PR firm to restore her reputation, but the stories kept coming. Every day, more former tenants came forward with their experiences. The PR firm quit after 2 weeks, refusing to represent her further. She gave interviews claiming she was the victim of a smear campaign by deadbeat renters, but her own social media history contradicted her. Screenshots of her luxury vacations while tenants lived in squalor went viral. Her claim of running affordable housing was juxtaposed with photos of the mold, the broken appliances, the uninhabitable conditions. She even tried to sue Sarah for defamation. The lawsuit was dismissed within weeks when Sarah's lawyer, working pro bono through a tenant rights organization, presented the mountain of documentation. The judge had been particularly unimpressed with Agatha's claims of financial hardship while she wore a watch worth more than most people's yearly rent. The final blow came when the fire safety investigation at one of her buildings concluded that she'd knowingly allowed tenants to live in a structure that violated multiple safety codes. The building was condemned. The financial domino effect Sarah had predicted began. Agatha couldn't make her mortgage payments without the rental income from that building. The banks called in their loans. Creditors came after her personal assets. Her car was repossessed. Her designer wardrobe was auctioned to pay debts. Within 6 months, Agatha Cornwall was forced to sell all 12 buildings at a loss. The buildings were purchased by a non-profit affordable housing organization, backed by investors including, ironically, Preston Blackwell, who decided to put his money where his mouth was about ethical housing. The new management immediately began repairs, bringing all buildings up to code. They returned security deposits to former tenants. They established fair rent prices and actual maintenance schedules. They hired property managers who treated tenants like people, not profit sources. Sarah sat in her apartment, the same one she'd been about to be evicted from, watching the news coverage of Agatha Cornwall leaving court after settling with dozens of former tenants. The woman looked broken, diminished, nothing like the towering fury who terrorized Sarah for months. She'd aged years in months, her face gaunt, her designer clothes replaced with off-the-rack suits. She walked with her shoulders hunched, avoiding cameras, avoiding eye contact. She was facing 5 years of probation, community service, and financial penalties that would take decades to pay off. Her real estate license had been revoked. Her reputation was destroyed. Her engagement was ended. Her empire was gone. Sarah felt no triumph, just exhaustion. And relief. And something else, a quiet satisfaction that justice, real justice, had been served. Emma ran in from the bedroom, holding a drawing she'd made at school. "Mommy, look. I drew our home." Sarah pulled her daughter close, looking at the crayon drawing of their little apartment with its patched walls and second-hand furniture. But in the drawing, there were flowers in the window and sunshine streaming in. Emma had drawn smiles on both their faces. "It's beautiful, baby. Are we going to stay here now? Forever?" "As long as we need to," Sarah promised. "No one's going to push us out." There was a knock at the door. Sarah opened it to find Marcus, the veteran, smiling. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a check, her portion of the settlement from the class action lawsuit against Agatha. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to pay off her debt, maybe even save a little. Maybe take Emma somewhere nice for vacation. "We did it," Marcus said. "All of us together. We actually did it." "We did," Sarah agreed. "How are you doing?" "Got an apartment in one of the renovated buildings. New management is amazing. They actually fix things when they break. Imagine that." He grinned. And I'm working with the Housing Coalition now, helping other tenants know their rights. Turns out my military organizational skills translate pretty well to tenant advocacy. After Marcus left, Sarah sat with Emma, reading her bedtime story. As her daughter drifted off to sleep, Sarah thought about everything that had happened. She thought about the person she'd been 6 months ago, scared and desperate and alone. She thought about the person she'd become, someone who'd learned that power doesn't come from wealth or intimidation. It comes from standing up. From refusing to be crushed. From finding others and standing together. Her phone buzzed. A message from Jennifer Ortiz. Your story inspired 3 other cities to launch investigations into predatory landlords. Sacramento, Seattle, and San Francisco all have tenant coalitions forming based on your model. You started something bigger than you know. Sarah smiled. Maybe she had. Or maybe she just reminded people of something they already knew but had forgotten, that bullies, no matter how rich or connected, can be stopped. It just takes one person brave enough to say no. And then another. And another. Until the voices become too loud to ignore. If this story of justice served code made your day, hit that like button and drop a comment telling us about your own landlord horror stories. Have you ever had to stand up to someone who thought they were untouchable? Let